Budget hearing started. This is the budget hearing for the Bureau of Administrative Adjudication. I'm Counselor Green, joined by Counselor Hogan and Counselor Peniagua. We'll let you take it away.
All right, thank you. Good morning, Leah Whitmer. I'm the Director and Chief Administrative Law Judge of the Bureau of Administrative Adjudication, as well as the Parking Violations Bureau. Separate departments with separate budgets and separate hearings, but I just pointed out because there's a lot of overlap, obviously. So some of this stuff will be a little duplicative. I gave you a one-page handout. The BAA is on one side, parking is on the other side. BAA is under the law department budget and parking is under finance. Functionally, we operate very cohesively and shift our focus based on the current needs of either of those departments. Yeah, I'll just go through the handout. It's I highlighted what I think is important stuff to focus on for the year and gives you a good overview of the progress that we've made. So you can see at the top, there's just an overview of ticket issued and since the inception of the BAA in 2018. And I think that visual there gives you a clear indication that the volume of tickets issued by codes continues to go up at a pretty rapid pace. And then if you look at the pie chart below, it gives you a breakdown of the different types of violations, and that is for this fiscal year. So far this fiscal year, we're almost 4,000 tickets issued. Obviously higher on general property maintenance right now because we're coming up on spring. The number of blight citations will go up as the code inspectors start citing for overgrowth, trash, and debris. And then zoning, I anticipate that to go up with the passage of rezone. It'll be a more cohesive document that they're able to readily cite for, and periodic inspection continues to go through as they're citing for those different violations. You can see on the hearings portion there that we just, at the beginning of this year, restarted in-person hearings, which we're pretty excited about, and we added in ex parte hearings, meaning somebody can just submit their written defense with their hearing request form. We're already doing that for parking, so it's a nice option, especially for the periodic inspection cases where some of them might be, I applied, I just want to contest this because I applied, or I had one of the exemptions and I just didn't notify codes of it. So it's a nice option, and we're starting to get those trickling in. We also still offer virtual, which we've been offering since COVID. On the bottom left there, I put a little 200 plus. We've started the adjudication of illegal setouts. When the invoicing of that shifted to the City Payment Center, we took over adjudication. That was about September of 2022. So we've done about 200 of those. The majority of those are ex parte. And then we're going to explore rolling out in-person and virtual options for that as well. I have one of my part-time ALJs focused on working through those adjudications anytime somebody contests those, and anticipating a big increase in those with the rollout of the trash carts. So we're also working closely with all of the departments involved to explore new software systems for that. So I'm hopeful. Ames, the software that we have for parking, just rolled out a codes module that we've been testing, and I'm going to be proposing that we purchase that. Kind of twofold: one for a software solution for the illegal setouts, and then also for ticketing and adjudication of the non-compliant property codes. So I'm really excited about that. I think it'll be a great solution. If we roll it out to DPW for the illegal setouts, those teams would have handheld devices just like the parking checkers have handheld devices, and they're able to ticket and issue directly from that device.
And on that note, I know we're paper-based and we're going to electronic, which is great, but I sent a note a couple of months ago about the fact that the return address on those violations currently says codes, because it used to be the codes department, but it's DPW that does illegal setouts and trash, right?
DPW does the illegal setouts, yes.
But the notice that gets mailed, the card, says codes department.
Okay.
So when somebody gets that fine and they call codes to ask them about it, code says we don't do that.
Yep.
So it's just a miscommunication, and I'm sure it's just old stationery that we just need to update too.
Sure, yeah, and I can convey that to DPW. Again, we're just handling the adjudication of the tickets that are issued by DPW for illegal set out and codes for the non-compliant property codes. But I'll make a note of that. So taking over those illegal setouts has been a pretty big lift, and you know, I think once we flesh out the process, get the proper software in place, get staffing up to par with that, including additional administrative law judges, which, as you know, has been a challenge. Which is why I request the residency waiver that unfortunately wasn't approved. So I'm working really hard to try and find qualified candidates for that that will be able to handle any influx that comes with the rollouts of the sanitation cards. In the middle there, the revenue that we've generated so far this fiscal year, and I anticipate that revenue increasing. Again, the volume of tickets that increases, the revenue is just going to continue to increase. I know we've also in previous years talked about increasing the fines and penalties, so I am working on that, making that amendment to bring before you to the local ordinance. I'm working with law, City Payment Center, Codes MBD to come up with what we think is an appropriate increase for those since the inception in 2018. So that'll be something that I'll be proposing soon, and we've talked about a lot.
Is that across the board increase or just for the higher violators?
It would be across the board. The lowest tickets right now start at $50, and then upon default they double. So we would be proposing increases across the board for all of those.
An idea of what percentage you're thinking about, or?
I don't, but happy to accept any feedback anyone has, if anyone
What about
strong
chronic,
feelings.
Like I talked to Jake about chronic violators, people that were always sending, like houses in certain areas that.
Yep.
You always get complaints on. We're always sending codes up there. They're always citing them.
Yeah, so for those cases, my, I think, approach with codes and the law department has been it should only go through the BAA for several rounds of ticketing, and then should be sent to the law department to file a petition in city or state Supreme Court, since there are higher fines in those courts and those judges have greater authority to hold those property owners in contempt should they so choose.
Well, with the fines we issue,
Yeah.
how many times, if they don't pay the fines, you can get lien on their property, correct?
We're not doing that. So
We're not doing it, or
we are not doing it. We have last year I did say that we were going to start doing that. We have determined that it's not an appropriate collection mechanism for the city, just based on the lower amount of the BAA fines, the amount it costs to file a judgment to have it placed as a lien, and the administrative capacity. As the volume of codes tickets increases, right, the more you have to do for each ticket. So we're at a point where we need to increase staff and catch up on a small backlog we have. So we haven't had the capacity to fold that in, but I think the city already has an appropriate collection mechanism in place, which is rolling on the property taxes, as we've also discussed. There is the caveat that the existing state legislation, RPTL 901, that was passed at the same time, or that was amended to include Syracuse at the same time that the BAA legislation was passed, isn't workable for our municipality, because we have opted out of the judicial tax foreclosure process. So unfortunately that was an oversight at the time it was passed. So we're working closely with our New York State partners to try and amend that to make it workable for Syracuse. So the law department, myself, we've met with Senator Magnarelli's office and others to try and get that amended so that we could roll them on. Right now, we include the amount owed on the bottom of tax searches, not as this isn't required to be paid, to clear title to the property, and we're getting good response to that. So I think that once we can get them to be fully rolled on every May, that we'll see an even bigger compliance rate at that point.
Well, I'm not going to pretend I understood any of that.
Okay.
So we got to, but if in order to clear the title, if that's on there, you're talking legally to clear the title?
I'm not. I'm talking right now, they do a tax search. When somebody's going to sell a property, they reach out to the city payment center asking to do a search of anything that's owed, right? That has been rolled onto the taxes to clear that. We're not rolling them on right now because there are legal steps that you have to take.
Right. About that. Okay.
Yes. And we are working with the state to amend that state legislation to allow us to do so. Again, because the state legislation that was adopted, it was, just to put it very basically, essentially copied and pasted from other New York State municipalities, but different states either opted into the judicial foreclosure process where you go to court to foreclose, whereas we rely on the land bank and seize properties. So it isn't workable. The law department and the collections team in the law department went through every case that we had to see what was able to be rolled over, and based on the restrictions of that legislation, there essentially were none. So we're working to amend it, and then we will move forward rolling them all onto the taxes, which is a great collection mechanism that works for everything else we're rolling on.
So to the extent that we can be helpful with the state delegates, I think
Okay.
that's what we're pretty annoying to people, so
Yeah,
we're good at that.
yeah.
So.
We just I've been working with the law department, and we just submitted a memorandum to them outlining kind of the due process that all of our departments have as far as notifying people of those fines and penalties and the tax seizure process, and then we're reconvening with them. So, obviously with that many parties involved, it's a somewhat slow process, but, I'm hopeful, that we're on the right track and we're getting there. We still have everything. We're increasing notices that we're sending, and, like I've said before, every round you get more people to respond, right? You've got codes doing their thing. If it's not compliant, they get ticketed and fined. Some of those people are going to pay. We issue a default decision in order, doubling that fine by adding on the penalty. Some people respond to that and pay. We're in the process of adding kind of a final notice. This will be sent to collections, and then more people will pay. And then going forward, once we're able to, amend that state legislation, we will roll them on, and then they'll get all of those notices that come with that. So, I appreciate everyone's patience. Obviously, things ebb and flow, and it's really just I don't want to come up with an ad hoc solution that I expend money and resources like filing the judgments. If there's nothing on the back end, I really think rolling onto the taxes is the best solution, and that we'll get there.
I'm not being critical in any way, because I've known how long this has gone on, and it's such an improvement from where we were.
Yeah.
Because housing court was a disaster for us a lot of times to do that. And I'm glad this was, in fact, this former Councilor Nicoletti, I think, his idea years ago. But it's really a great solution, and we just want to get to the end of the trail, I guess.
Yeah, and we're making progress. We literally just submitted that memorandum that I mentioned earlier this week. We're trying to set up a meeting with Senator Magnarelli's office to keep the ball rolling. Assemblyman, sorry.
But I think what Councilor Green said, maybe with our help, this is a critical thing, and a lot of times Assemblyman Magnarelli's people are here sometimes, but this is such a critical thing as far as what we're trying to do with it. So.
Do you have a sense of how many people actually do take care of paying the fines or penalties versus the ones that don't?
Yep. So I tried to put that in the pie chart for you, but due to the limitations of the software IPS, it gets a little hard to know, out of the tickets issued, what did people do initially? Did they pay? Did they default? Did they request a hearing? Because it's kind of layering all of those in. So if you take a look at page 134 of the budget book, you can see that the numbers for last year and then the estimated for this year, which we're pretty close on, but essentially it's about, let me just find my notes.
Oh, here it is.
Yeah, it gives a breakdown. So, you know, so far, I have it here.
So the number of tickets collected is in a year, right? This is just
Yeah, that's the, I did it based on fiscal year. Paid is around 40% of the total issued. So far, this year, you know, if we're going off the, what did I say? Almost 4,000, about 40% of those have been paid. And again, that might be paid at the onset, paid after default, paid after a hearing. About 50% of them default, in which we issue a default decision and order. Again, they could pay after that or request a hearing, and then about 20% request a hearing at some point, either an initial hearing, a stay of default hearing, an appeal, and are adjudicated. And then we have, I think, about 5 to 10% that are pending that need to be served.
When you say that the increase again of fines that you want across the board,
Yeah.
is that BAA's increase or is that ticket violation? Like, you get $50 illegal set out.
So illegal setouts they're governed by separate ordinances. I'm talking about the BAA fines and penalties that are in the Syracuse Property Conservation Code that range from $50 to $1,200 depending on the fine and the level of ticket. Yeah, flesh that out more. And then Codes is also planning to increase the volume of tickets issued annually. So
I wondered about those tickets and the fines that were assessed with that original ticket, if those were seeing an increase as well.
when you say the fines assessed with that original ticket.
The ticket that says you have an illegal set out.
Illegal setouts, again, they're,
Sorry.
yeah, sorry. Illegal setouts are DPW, those are the 325.
Okay. Pick a codes violation and give me a,
Yeah, so for failure to apply for rental registry, the first round ticket is $50. If you default, it's $100. Yeah, those are the fines and penalties that I'm talking about increasing for each of those four categories: blight, general property maintenance, periodic inspection, and zoning. That I'll be proposing an amendment to those. That those will be increasing, which is something that I know Councilor Hogan and others have been asking for. I was hesitant to do it during the eviction moratorium because based on the hearings and the challenges that we had with property owners being able to evict during those, obviously that has come to an end, and people have the regular legal remedies under New York state law to evict. So I feel that we're at a point where I feel comfortable exploring increasing those.
so with that, when Sue Katzoff was here with her corp counsel budget hearing, she mentioned a top 10 bad actor program that they're starting. Is that what you're talking about?
No, that would be her law department housing team. So again, for non-compliant property code violations, the city has two avenues. They can ticket and fine and those tickets go through the BAA. Someone can contest or pay, or they can codes can send the cases to the law department, their housing unit, to file a petition in city or state Supreme Court. And that's what I reference. Those judges and those courts, the fines are accruing per day at a much higher rate, and those judges have the authority to hold the property owners in contempt and issue other remedies to resolve the violations.
Those are like
And
the
that's
repeat
very
offenders.
effective if you get before the right judge.
Yes.
The Supreme Court, very effective. And it just says,
Well, and the fine amounts that they're getting, regardless, if there's no compliance or defaulting, those fine amounts are significantly higher.
right, and as I said, Assembly Magnarelli has a great staff. They're watching. I got an email to get address to give you for the person who's handling what we just talked about
Okay.
in their office. So
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. All right, great. And then the final point I wanted to make is that 50+%. Obviously, this budget, both the BAA and then we'll talk about parking, at the next hearing, I'm increasing staff by over 50%. I really feel that it is needed to handle the capacity. For BAA, like I said, with that increase in volume of tickets, we're well beyond the point of me and 1 or 2 paralegals. We need additional staff to be able to process those tickets. We are doing everything. We're getting the tickets, we're confirming service addresses, we're serving, we're reserving returned mail, and then everything throughout the process, answering all questions related to the tickets that aren't specific to the violation, issuing those default orders. Again, it was one of the reasons, I proposed that residency waiver requests for the administrative law judges. We're backlogged on default decision and orders, getting those out the door. We're good on hearings. We get the people that are requesting those in and scheduled usually within 30 days, but on the front end tickets and then on the back end defaults to make it run as it was intended, which, if you're opting to fine and send someone through the BAA, the goal was that it's a quicker process, right, than going through the local courts where those things take time. We want it to be quicker, so we need the staff to push through all of those.
So just what kind of qualifications? Is it just to be a lawyer, right, to be an administrative law judge, or has it got to be a lawyer involved in housing, or what's
It's got to be a lawyer admitted at least 3 years living in the city. And it's part-time, right? So that's the issue. No one's going to move into the city for a part-time job that's 5 hours a week.
I mean, I don't think the lawyers that you use now, they have other, they belong to law practices and everything else. Is this their only way of making a living, these particular lawyers? You're not. No,
I have a pretty big mix between BAA and parking. I have some where this is their only employment. I have one woman who's, I have people that are retired. I have people in private practice. I just brought on someone on the appeals panel who's at Bousquet Holstein. But that's a couple hours a quarter, so it really depends. But I can tell you that I've posted the position numerous times and I get very little interest.
Is it because of the hourly rate here, or what?
Well, the hourly rate, I am proposing that increase. So for the BAA right now, the appeals panel is at $125. The part-time ALJs that I use on a more regular basis, we drop them down to $100 an hour. You may recall that I had cut that position during the COVID contingency budget. I brought it back at $100 an hour when we brought it back, just to try and at the time, based on capacity, and I was preparing to go out on parental leave, so trying to make everything work. And now I'm requesting to increase that to $125, which it was set at the onset of the BAA, and to be on par with the state efforts to increase the assigned counsel rates. A lot of the attorneys that are doing this work are in private practice and do assigned counsel in either family court or criminal court, and so we have to be competitive with that to try and attract them. So the postings that I have online right now are 75 to 125, because obviously I don't know, if it'll get approved or not.
So I'm just speaking for myself, but I think from other counselors and the conversation I've had, I think we'd feel more comfortable paying someone that's a city resident more, I think, than a suburban person. So, I'm certainly supportive of paying them more, and if it needs to go higher, I think that's probably...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You have somebody in it now, or you don't?
So for the BAA, I have 2 part-time administrative law judges right now that are at the $100 an hour, and then I have 3 on the appeals panel at $125. The BAA ordinance specifically outlines that those regularly hearing the underlying cases can't pull up to the appeals panel. Parking, it lets those hearing examiners pull up. So I have 2 different pools for these, and then I as well hear them. And then the upcoming budget, I have the additional positions I'm requesting are a deputy director who would be an attorney and an administrative law judge, a supervisor, and then an additional paralegal and a clerk too. I'm hoping with this structuring for both BAA and then you'll see with parking, to create a supervisory mechanism. Right now, I'm the only supervisor, director, any position of authority for both departments, and it's just, based on the volume of day-to-day escalations, administrative tasks, supervision of the existing hearing examiners, ALJs, and support staff. It's just not feasible, and I want to ensure that we're providing the best constituent services we can, since, it's a lot of constituent services, so we need this, chain of command, if you will.
So you have this in here as a full-time position, but it's part-time, so you could potentially...
No, it's a full-time.
It's a full-time, but you could have 4...
No, they're separate, sorry.
So you said you had 3 judges, I don't see
If you go on the bottom, temporary services, if you look at administrative law judges, it says 4. I actually have 5 right now. So I'm proposing adding a full-time, rather than increasing the number on the temporary services, I am increasing and trying to hire a full-time deputy director. So just like I'm the director and a chief administrative law judge, I would hire a deputy director who is also meets the criteria to be an administrative law judge. So just like me, if somebody calls in sick, I can do all the hearings, right? I'm here, I can do them. The hearings are my favorite part, so in a perfect world, I'd love to be able to schedule myself, weekly or bi-weekly to do some of the hearings.
Have you posted that yet, or you're waiting until the budget?
I have not. I have the part-time posted. I have the authority to post and hire, but the position hasn't been added to my roster through the county yet. So I'm hoping to just hire a full-time administrative law judge right now, if I'm able, and then assuming the position gets approved, then we would transition that person. And then I'm also exploring, the numbers, in a perfect world, I'd probably bring on 1 more part-time administrative law judge. So I'd have 3 part-time, 3 appeals, and myself and the deputy director. Again, with the service disputes, I have one that, most of his hours are spent primarily on those ex parte service disputes. So to keep up, again, I don't want to keep coming back here every year with us being in a backlog. I was really trying to be more proactive this year and anticipate those influx of tickets for both from codes and DPW, and just so that we're not constantly trying to play catch up, which I feel like I've been doing since I started, because you never, what's going to happen next year. So much of it is dependent on other departments issuing those tickets. But I feel like in talking to DPW and codes, I have a pretty good handle on their goals, so that I can anticipate our staffing needs, which is, again, why I'm asking for the big increase. But I've spent a lot of time going through it with budget and looking at other departments and their structures when you're adding in deputy directors and supervisors. So I think I put a lot of thought into it, and although it seems like a lot compared to the overall budget, my overall budget, I think it's what we need, and I think we'll be able to make up for it on the back end, by being more efficient, issuing more tickets, and then getting that collection mechanism in place.
Lee,
yeah,
you have a very important job. You don't have to oversell
yeah.
it. This is where we started and where we are now.
Yeah.
And it's a lot because of your leadership. This is really important, and it really affects the neighborhood. So, I'm convinced.
Yeah.
Totally convinced.
Great. Well, I convinced Mr. Rudd over there, so I'm hopeful I can convince you. Yeah, he's creeping up, so.
I was just going to add, because she said it really plainly, our staffing goes up. I feel like people are always looking to me, where's the exception? Who's the exception? Where did it go up? Leah and PVB and BAA are basically the exception of where new needs got awarded, but they got awarded because she also has to, we pay for it with revenue. So her operation directly impacts our ability to collect these charges, and if we don't, we could be leaving it all. The auditor pointed out there's not a scientific, I don't have a performance-based contract with Leah, so it is something to monitor her revenue that comes in to make sure it's hitting the targets we set, but she is one of the few departments who can offset their new positions with hopefully revenue, and the BAA revenue has gone up substantially over the first few years. And the parking tickets have been kind of like a roller coaster with COVID. So it's important that I think she have the resources, and it sounds like everybody's on board with that, but her things are, I think, basically the exception.
And the SURA, what's the SURA number again, the code? It's in personal services.
And there's a, do this after, but that made me think of, in the special objects, there is a one-time expense line, and that has, I think, 170,000 for handhelds that also, which you could speak to because you'll be better versed, but there's money for that. That's not in DPW, it's not in police, it's not in BAA, it's not in PVB, it's in a one-time special object.
Yeah, that's the only other expense. I've been working with all of the departments he mentioned, DPW for, if we purchase the codes module through Ames, then DPW will need handheld devices. I've been working with SPD, and we'll get into this more in the parking budget hearing, but, they recently purchased, I think, $70,000 worth of handhelds. I'm working with them to purchase more, to move more towards electronic tickets, fewer handheld tickets. And then, and for codes, it would be, at this point, just the software. And then, we'll see if it works great for DPW. Maybe it's something that codes would want to consider down the road, as an addition or replacement for IPS. But that's what that $170,000 is for, so that the Ames, the parent company EDC, has given us a quote so that, the more we're buying, the cheaper they are. So Tim and his team put it all in one pot so that we could pull from that pot at the lower quote amount.
So IPS uses iPads currently? Is that what codes uses
Yes.
out in the field? So you're proposing to replace the iPad?
No, not right now. Nope, I'm proposing.
Long term, what do you see?
I mean, that would largely be up to Jake, right? But I'm proposing right now that DPW use these handhelds for the issuance of illegal setouts in place of the paper tickets. I'm proposing that SPD outfits all of the parking checkers and maybe increases parking checkers with handhelds, and finds a way to get officers who are issuing high volumes of tickets handhelds, because the handwritten tickets just, if we have the mechanism and the ability to purchase them, it's going to make us more money in the long run, because handwritten, there's just so many components to it. Yeah.
And that 107 will fund those handhelds for DPW?
I honestly don't know how that figure. Yeah, DPW, I think we'll see how many DPW needs, right? Obviously, Sam Perry would have one, possibly some of the crew leaders. So as people are out on trash routes, if they're not using the new carts, they have advised, those would be cited. So I think it's still figuring out who gets them, but DPW would have a set number, and I think the bulk would probably be SPD, in addition to the $70,000 that they're in the process of purchasing now. Yeah. I think those are all the main points that I wanted to hit on the budget. Obviously, page 134, like I said, has a breakdown. I tried to be mindful. Most of those are tickets. So again, a ticket corresponds directly to a violation, whereas you'll see total number of hearings held based on the number of complaints. That number, the estimate for this year, 300, looks low, but it encompasses over 1,000 tickets. So I tried to do it more. Again, ticket numbers, but I gave you that so you could see, and you all get the weekly calendar. I guess the other thing that I'll just point out is we're trying really hard, just like I said, to be more constituent friendly. We're working to get all of our forms online. Right now I have the parking hearing request form online, so somebody can go in and fill it out right online, or go and there's a fillable PDF. Working to get all of the forms up there, more information up there. Again, just because it's just me right now doing all of that, in working with the other departments that assist, but once I have an additional staff at a supervisory level, I'll be able to split up those tasks and really get those on there. But so I'm excited about that. And then obviously, with additional staff, we are in talks just to reconfigure our space, build it out, maybe absorb some of Law's space up here if plans go well. So those are other things that we're exploring and would be more focused on one, on the constituent, and two, on our staff. Our staff works incredibly hard. They have really challenging jobs, right? You would think that people would get more upset about a BAA ticket that has to do with their house, but people get more upset about parking tickets, the $40 parking tickets, and come in, hot and heavy all day, every day, on the phones, via email, mail, in person. So I really want to ensure that we have an efficient and professional environment to serve the constituents. And one of my biggest concerns with this space reshuffling is that my staff has somewhere where they can go and take lunch and have a break, because I have people that are public facing, and for any of you that have been down in our space, it's a little maze of closets and corners, and we don't have any space like that. So I'm hopeful that with this addition we can be mindful of where we're putting people, how we're serving the public, and what kind of space we're providing for our staff.
What kind of response did we get from the administration about that?
Great, yeah. I think it's just, people have to move over to One Park Place, and then, I've been in meetings with Corey and Sue and about the analysis for this space, assuming that personnel and digital services move over and Law absorbs some more of the personnel side and the little rooms, more set space for hearing rooms. Right now the hearing rooms, if we're doing I really love that we've combined parking and BAA, and I'm really trying to streamline all those processes so that they largely mimic each other in compliance with the local laws. But they're packed in like sardines. Like if codes is coming, a respondent or two, and a member of the public wants to come in, I don't have enough room, which is why I've been using the council chambers for the appeals panels, because I need 3 to 5, administrative law judges, and then the public. So yeah. The administration has been completely open, and I've been on their list, and I just keep promising staff, like, soon, I promise, you'll have a place you can go eat lunch or take a break that's not, you don't hear your colleagues, yelling back and forth with people about parking tickets.
Quick question.
Yeah.
The total hearings held, and then it says parentheses, based on number of complaints.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Is complaint?
So a complaint is that's the way that we schedule hearings, and the way that codes issues. If they're issuing a complaint for your property, let's say they're citing it, they issue a complaint, and that complaint could have 1 violation or 20 violations.
So you're saying codes triages who goes to?
No, I was just giving you the number breakdown. Like, we're scheduling 300 hearings, but that actual hearing could be addressing 1 violation or 20 violations. So you can see the 1050, that is the number of violations addressed at those hearings.
Okay.
So as you transition from paper tickets to electronic tickets, right? Is that what you were talking about just now?
Just for DPW at this point.
Okay, so how do you reach people to let them know?
With the BAA, the non-compliant property code violations, we serve those certified mail.
Certified mail.
Mm-hmm. And then if it doesn't get served, it's an analysis of, is it worth paying and sending to a process server?
Any other questions?
Good work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.